Hi everyone, welcome to WeTV. My name is Chris. It's great to see you today. Today we're going to have another I Can Make. And because it's getting very close to a certain time of year, we're going to make something very timely and very topical. Can you think? What is one thing that we can make this time of year? What could we make? Wow! Mooncake. Yeah, mooncake. Have you ever tried to make a mooncake? I had to do this. I've always wanted to learn how to make mooncakes, but honestly, I don't like mooncake. Really, no. But I love chocolate, so I thought I'll make chocolate mooncake. Okay? Do you want to make chocolate mooncake with me? Now I've tried this recipe at home and I made some minor changes and now we're ready to share it with you. Okay, let's take a look at our ingredients. Now there's two different things we're going to make. First, we're going to make the outside, which is going to be like a cake, but not quite the same as the cake we made before. To make this cake, we need flour, of course. We need cocoa powder because we want the outside to be chocolatey too, and cocoa powder is the main ingredient in chocolate. We also need a little olive oil, not much. We're going to use some mineral water, and this water is supposed to be a high pH water. If you want to know if the water that you have at home is high pH, you can look at the bottle. I recommend you use a spring or mineral water, and then you should get the correct water for this recipe, okay? And we're going to use some sugar syrup. Now, you can go out and buy a sugary syrup. There's lots of them on the market, but we're going to make our own sugar syrup to start the recipe, okay? Then we're going to make a filling, which is going to go inside of our mooncakes. And to make our filling, we're going to use evaporated milk. Now, evaporated milk comes in a can, and there's two types of milk that come in a can. One is called sweetened condensed milk. And the sweetened condensed milk has a lot of sugar. We're not going to use that. We're going to use evaporated milk, which means that someone cooked the milk and got a lot of the water out of the milk. So it's a stronger, more concentrated milk. We're going to use chocolate, of course, and we're going to use some butter. And last, we're going to use some walnuts. Now, if you want, you really could make your own evaporated milk at home. You just need to start with milk, put it in a pan, and boil it for a while, and that way you will get rid of some of the water content of the milk and make it heavier milk. But we decided to go ahead and use a can. It's easier. Let's take a look at our tools that we need. Always have tools. And to make mooncakes, you need to have a mooncake mold. This is a special tool that allows you to shape your mooncakes into these special little shapes and also decorates the top of the mooncake as well. Then, how do we do this? All right, we're going to start with our cake. We're going to bring 1.5 cups of water and 1.5 cups of sugar to a boil. This is how we're going to make our syrup, equal parts water and sugar. And you're going to boil that until all the sugar has dissolved into the water. Once that's done, we just need to set that aside and let it cool. Then we're going to get a large bowl. We're going to put in 2 cups of flour and 1/3 of a cup of cocoa powder. And we want to mix that together very well. Try to make sure there are no lumps in the cocoa powder. It'll make it mix a lot smoother. Once the syrup has cooled, we can add it to the flour and then start to mix it together. We also need to add in a 1/2 cup of olive oil and 1 teaspoon, remember a teaspoon is a small spoon, of water. Okay, and that's our mineral water, high pH mineral water. And you only need 1 teaspoon. It's just to help the chemical reaction of the cake. Okay? Then we will mix it to form a sticky dough, And then we will let it set overnight. This is not a simple, short recipe. This takes a lot of time. And the best way to do it is to put the dough in the refrigerator and wait until the next day to start working with the dough. Okay? Good. Then, of course, we have to make our filling. And our filling, we will start with water. We're going to boil the water. Now, there's no water in our filling. Make sure you do not get any water into your chocolate. If water gets into the chocolate as you're melting it, it can actually ruin your chocolate. So do not let any water into your chocolate. We're going to boil water, and then once it's boiling, we're going to let it simmer. In other words, we're not going to keep it boiling. We're just going to keep it hot. Then we're going to put a glass bowl into our boiling water. And the glass bowl is to protect our chocolate from the very, very hot pan. We don't want to burn our chocolate. We're going to put the can of evaporated milk into the bowl and let that start to heat up. Then we're going to chop up 500 grams of chocolate and chop it up pretty well. The reason why we chop it is it will help the chocolate melt easier. We'll put the chocolate in the milk, and then we'll add 1/4 cup of butter and stir that in as well. And if you want, you can add vanilla or coffee or other flavors into our chocolate recipe. But again, no water. When all the chocolate is melted, we can remove the bowl from the pot, and then we will let it cool. We can chop up the walnuts and then put those in. And when the mixture is cool, we're going to let it sit on the counter and completely cool. And then we're going to put it in the refrigerator, and we're going to let it cool overnight, okay? And it will get much harder the next day. This recipe is very similar to making chocolate truffles, all right? And that's what we're going to use to fill our mooncakes. And then we're going to get ready to make the mooncakes. And when we make the mooncakes, we're going to take our dough out. It's going to be very sticky, very sticky. And we're going to take some out and make it flat. Then we will put some filling into that dough. We'll roll it into a little ball. Put the ball into the mold with a little bit of flour so it doesn't stick, and then we'll press it down. We're going to bake the mooncakes at 160 degrees centigrade for 8 minutes. After that, you take the mooncakes out and let them cool for about 15 minutes. And then we bake them again. You bake them a second time for another 5 minutes. The first time we bake the mooncake is to get them to set in that shape. If you bake them at too hot a temperature the first time, they will spread out and get very flat. They won't look very pretty. But they'll still taste good, so don't worry. And then the second time we bake them is just to finish the baking process. After they've been baked, we want to let them cool a second time, and then we can put them in our refrigerator. And we actually want them in the refrigerator for 2 days, and this will help the outside become soft. When you first bake them, the outside will be a little hard, almost like a cookie. And then we want them to be soft when we serve them to our friends and family, so we have to keep them in the fridge for 2 days. And you don't want to eat them cold, so we're going to take them out and let them rise up to the room temperature, and then we can serve them to our friends and family. Keep the sugar stirring, okay? Don't let it just sit, because it'll start to form crystals, and you want to melt all the sugar completely into the water. Okay, I can see that all the sugar has now melted into this water, so I'm ready to turn off the burner and take this off and let this mixture cool before I mix it into the dough. You really don't want to mix the hot syrup in with the dough. You want it to be cooled first. Okay? Check 1, 2. Okay, let's get started with our flour and our cocoa powder. So I've got my flour measured out here, and I'm going to add some cocoa powder. And then what I'm going to do is start to mix this together so that it evens out the distribution of flour and cocoa powder. And then what I like to do is kind of make a hole in the middle. We call that making a well. And then I'm going to pour all the wet ingredients into the well. All right, I'm going to start by adding my oil. And now I'm going to add my syrup from earlier. And I'm not going to use all this syrup. What I want to do is make sure that I use the right amount of syrup. If it's too much liquid, the dough is not going to be good. We want this to be a very thick and very sticky dough. So I'm going to add a little, mix it in, add a little, mix it in. That's what I like to do. I always like to mix from the outside edge into the middle. If you look at my dough, you see it's very clumpy. It's making itself into balls already, and it's very dry. So we're going to add some more syrup. And again, I want to fold everything over. I almost forgot to add my spring water. Now, I like this spring water because it has a high pH content, and the pH content is right here on the side. It says that it is at least 7.3 plus or minus 0.5, and that's what we want. So, and I just need a teaspoon. This is obviously not a teaspoon. I'm not going to use that much water. That's too much, but that's okay. Just pour some of that in. Okay, and that's all I need. Okay, I'm happy with this. It's got a good consistency. It's very thick. It's got a nice color, and it smells very good. So, now I'm going to let this set. I'm going to put it in my refrigerator and let it set overnight, and then tomorrow I'll be ready to make mooncakes. Okay, to start, I want to chop up my chocolate. I know I said to do it later, but it's a lot of chocolate, so it's probably better to do it first. We're ready to start to melt our chocolate, which means we're going to heat up our milk first, and we're going to use what we call a double boiler system. We're going to have a pot with water in it, and then I'm going to put this here so that then I can add a bowl inside the water, and this will allow the bowl to be heated, but it won't allow the chocolate to get so hot that it burns. Now the water's getting pretty warm, so I'm going to go ahead and put the bowl in here. And then put my can of condensed milk inside the bowl. When you're making this chocolate filling, you really want to use probably a very dark chocolate, 70%, 80%, really, really dark chocolate. If you're using a less dark chocolate, like say 50 or 60%, you might want to add some cocoa powder to the mixture to help richen the chocolate flavor and make it a little stronger. While this is getting warm, I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla just to give it some extra flavor. I want a little coffee flavor, so I'm going to add some powdered coffee to this too. Not a lot of powdered coffee, just some. So now that the milk's getting warm, I want to start adding chocolate. And I'm just going to go ahead and use the spoon to add my chocolate. Don't want to just start pouring chocolate in here crazy. It might go into the water and then be lost forever. Pour chocolate, lost. And I want to keep stirring the chocolate, make sure that it's melting. It's going to take some time. I'm going to add my butter now. Usually I would like to let the butter sit out and get soft, but it'll be okay. It's going to melt in this anyway. Okay, it looks like all of the chocolate has finally melted in. There's a little bit of clump still, but that's okay. It's still hot, so it's going to keep melting. I'm ready to take this off the burner and let it cool, put in my walnuts, and then we're done for today, and we'll have to come back tomorrow and finish. Okay, it's time to chop the walnuts. This will be much easier than chopping the chocolate was. All right, good enough. Now my chocolate is still cooling. Once it's cooled off, I'm going to mix these nuts into the chocolate, and then I'm going to put it in the refrigerator overnight. Okay, let's add our walnuts into our chocolate mixture. And we want to stir this in. Yep. So you have to let it sit overnight because you can't use it when it's liquid like this. It has to be somewhat solid. And the only way to do that is to make it cool. If you just leave it sitting here, it will cool and it will get a little solid. But the best thing is to get it cold. So put it in the fridge. Okay, it's our next day and we're ready to actually start forming our mooncakes into real mooncake shapes. So I've got my dough and I've got my filling and I've got my mooncake mold. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of dough. First I want to dust my hands with some flour. You'll notice my cutting board, I took some plastic wrap and put it around the cutting board. Makes it easier to clean the cutting board. So I'm just going to take a little bit of dough. I think this will be enough. And I'm going to make it into a little ball first. And then I'm going to press it flat. If you have a rolling pin, you could roll it flat. You could roll it flat. Now I want to take some of the filling. You don't have to use a lot of filling. And I'm going to put that down onto the dough that I just flattened out. And then I want to close the dough around that filling. And this part's kind of important. You want to make sure that there are no leaks. You don't want the filling leaking out. I'm going to roll it back into a ball again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to dust it with some cocoa powder. And I'm hoping that the cocoa powder will keep it from sticking into the mold. I drop it in the mold, put it down, give it a good firm push, and then I can show you it has now been molded into the shape. It even has a little face of Garfield on it. Put that over there on my plate, and I'm ready to keep going. Might have been a little bit too much on that mold. Okay, my plate is full of mooncakes, so I'm going to go ahead and bake this first batch, and then while these are baking, I can make more. Ready? Well, my mooncakes are done, and they came out okay. They weren't great. Some of them broke, some of them changed shape, but you know what? One thing I'm certain of, these are all going to be so delicious. So I'm going to put them in the refrigerator for 2 days, and then after that, we're going to eat them, and they're going to be wonderful. I hope that you made some wonderful mooncakes too. I can't wait to see them, and more than anything, I hope that you love making. And now, it's time to go. See you next